So we're going to speak a bit about humour and why it's quite important and why it's quite useful. So yeah, I mean, whenever you're in an interaction with a girl, obviously it's not like you're trying to have like a serious conversation with her. It's supposed to be lighthearted. It's supposed to be playful. So it's to elicit positive reactions, positive emotions. So humour can be very, very useful in that sense. I would say that it's not necessarily like a requirement as such. It's just a very, very useful tool. So like, you know, I can very well say to guys, you know, I recommend you to be funny when you're speaking to a girl. It will help. But that's obviously kind of like a general sort of piece of advice that I would give that's going to appeal to most guys and probably appeal to most girls who are receiving it. But it has to kind of resonate with you as a person as well. So like, you know, you have to decide for yourself, are you a funny person? Is this the kind of characteristic that you're trying to convey to the external world? If that makes sense. So it's kind of got to resonate with you. So obviously what we're giving is advice. But at the end of the day, it's got to be something that kind of fits with who you are and who you want to be in the end. But yeah, generally speaking, of course, if you're funny, if you're humorous when you're speaking to girls, it's going to elicit positive emotions because you're trying to build you know, an emotional connection with a new person. What's one of the most charismatic traits that you can kind of convey? Humor is one of those things that's quite simple in some cases. But it's just one of those things that can, you know, get her to kind of feel that spark, get her to feel that kind of positive emotional reaction that she's going to remember you by and potentially want to see you again.
Humour's obviously really powerful. It communicates good taste, it's going to communicate intelligence. It says a lot if you're able to be humorous.
It's kind of like a muscle in a sense that's just never been trained for a lot of guys. You know, a lot of the time, well, certainly the clients that we tend to coach tend to be quite logical-minded guys, so they work in certain you know, fields which are more logical, like IT, finance, etc. And they just don't have this like daily kind of interaction, even with their own friends, where they are cracking jokes or they are ridiculing situations, where they are, you know, teasing in a light-hearted way or just taking the piss, having a bit of banter. And so it's just like this mind shift that's it's like an entire new skill to try and develop. And some guys actually, they have it in them, but they just never express it because of the fact that, well, A, it's an attractive girl who they're not used to speaking to, but B, it's because it's a new person and they don't allow themselves the license to do it because or the fact that it's a new person and there's these like fabricated like social barriers in place where you can't fully, you know.
Automatically that's unattractive because the girl can sense like he gives a fuck. That's already like she sees that as beta. I think when it comes to humour, you have to be willing to flop. You have to be willing to offend a girl. Learning how to be funny, you can approach it in a technical way. You know, there are courses out there. Stand-up comedians do courses to teach them how to construct jokes, how to deliver them, you know. Stuff that's really good to watch, I think, is crowd work, where the comedian is improvising, speaking with the crowd. Back and forth, that can be really useful. Andrew Schultz, so if you watch him, he's really good. He does great crowd work. Just adding descriptions can add more humor to it. So for example, like say Andrew Schultz is speaking to some Indian guy in the audience who's got round glasses. If he just said, hey, you look like Harry Potter, it wouldn't really be that funny. But what he would do is he would add more description to it, make it more specific. So like, you look like the poor man's version of an Indian Harry Potter, you know? That's more likely to, you know, elicit a laugh from the crowd. So I'll definitely recommend that you actually approach humor almost as a scientist, because it can be learned. You can actually learn how to be funnier. There is a formula, There are books out there on comedy writing secrets, on how to create good jokes.
It's the same with flirting. There's kind of a flirt formula to it in a sense. And a lot what you've mentioned there is actually really, really good advice. Actually, it's like, you know, crowd work is kind of like spontaneous in the moment type of humor. Improv. And that's essentially what you're doing in your day game interactions. You're having spontaneous, authentic conversations where you do genuinely need to think things up on the fly, and it's a skill that needs to be learned. So in a certain sense, you can't really go in there with canned lines or like scripted lines to say. Certainly when it comes to humor, you can't really do that. That will work maybe for the opener, but after the opener, then after that, it's got to be all genuine in the moment.
The guys that I've coached have asked me, "Yo, can you give me lines? Can you give me lines?" And I said, "No, I don't want to give you any fucking lines, because you're not really learning anything useful here. I want to teach you the skills, the skill set of how to be able to improvise in almost any situation. Pretty difficult if you're a paid stand-up comedian where your job is to make the crowd laugh. That's difficult. That's genuine pressure. But we as guys who are just approaching girls on the street, you know, we don't have to be that funny.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's just enough to be able to continue the conversation. So yes, I'm saying like look at the comedians, but remember, you only need to be probably like 5% as funny as those guys. You know,
exactly.
It's not that hard.
And it's just simple stuff like, you know, exaggerating certain things or downplaying certain things, you know, just teasing a little bit, you know, just like word associations even, just like, oh, she says one bit of information. For example, she reveals she's an accountant instead of being like, oh, that's interesting, what got you into that? Which is like the logical, somewhat slightly boring response. You can be like, you know, oh, I didn't expect you to be so boring. I mean, something like that, even though it's, you know, it's not you're trying to, you know, just be mean to her or like be, you know, taking the piss too much. It's just light-hearted stuff, really, which, it's like taking a certain piece of information, kind of flipping it around, turning it into something more interesting. And oftentimes, just with that mentality, funny things will just emerge, you know.
What I would say to most guys is you don't want to be too British with your humour when you're trying to, you know, meet women. What I mean by that is that British humour is very self-deprecating. A little bit of self-deprecation is fine. So an example with me, I'm a musician, and so I'm not much of a dancer, right? So it's completely fine for me to take the piss out of my dancing skills because it's not really a part of my core identity. So it doesn't really matter if I, you know, if I say to a girl, like, I dance like a drugged horse on a dance floor, you know, no problem there. You just don't want to be deprecating yourself in other areas that do matter. Small doses is fine. It shows that you've got a healthy ego. You can laugh at yourself. That's good.
No confidence.
Yes, that's good. But like I said, in small doses, much better to really focus. Most guys don't have this, is to work on their more cocky, funny humor. So one of the first things that I ever stumbled upon was in 2005, which was David D'Angelo's Cocky Funny DVD set. That was very useful. It might be a little bit dated, but still, like, I'm sure there's going to be quite a lot of useful stuff in there.
Even just stuff in the, you know, that you just see, just like online clips of stuff. You know, even like Russell Brand talking to like some news reporters or whatever. You know, there's certain, you'll find like certain people who you can sort of look up to almost as like humour mentors in a sense, where, you know, you can sort of apply their style and try and analyse, you know, how they're actually constructing these jokes. So like they've been given certain information, a certain stimulus, and then they're taking that stimulus, changing it, manipulating it in a certain way, and then revealing something as a result of that process of whatever it is, like downplaying or exaggerating or whatever, you know, teasing. That's just how it is, and it's something that you kind of want to sort of start integrating into your conversations. Certainly if you're more intermediate based, you know, for beginners it's more about just getting comfortable enough to even just, you know, have a conversation or even make a joke. But certainly for more intermediate guys to get to that next level with Daygame, certainly humour can be very, very, very useful.
I would say like probably 80% of pickup is just having good social skills. So therefore, humour is something that you can actually be practicing with anyone. You know, it doesn't always have to be with the girl that you fancy. The next time you're hanging out with your friends, make more of an effort to actually make them laugh. You know, make yourself laugh. Humour, you can be practicing outside of pickup as well. Next time you're buying a coffee, right, in a coffee shop, just say a little bit extra. Tom Terrero's line was when he'd be ordering coffee, they would ask him, what would you like, sir? He would say, 2 strippers and world peace. And if I can't get that, then just a cappuccino would do.
Just little things like
that,
you know?
Yeah, no. So not everything needs to be improvised. Like the best comedians, you know, it looks like it's improv, but I'm sure that maybe half of it is already sort of pre-scripted.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, there are certain, the thing is, even when you're doing Daygame long enough, you will probably repeat certain lines, certain phrases, certain sentences again, and that's fine. I mean, I do that, almost everybody does that who gets to a more advanced level. And it's just reference experience. So like, the girl says she's Italian and you're almost on like autopilot mode, and then you start like riffing on certain things that you've already spoken about in the past, whatever. Yeah, if you can, I would recommend obviously applying humor in your interactions if it resonates with you. But again, it's really about finding a certain style that kind of fits with you, with your personality, how you want to kind of convey yourself. But it is just one of those things that's just going to appeal to the majority of people, and it's a good way to kind of just raise your charisma and elicit positive emotions.
Humour is really effective in dealing with shit tests. Agree and amplify, for example, is a well-known technique. So recently I was out with Richard, and Richard was with this 21-year-old American girl who's really hot. So we were queuing up to get into McDonald's on the Strand at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And there was this English girl who's coked up with her gay friend. She was kind of mean to Richard. She said, wow, like, this girl's way out of your league, mate. And instead of sort of like getting butt hurt and you're saying, why the fuck are you saying that? That's rude. You're trying to call me ugly. Instead, he just smiles and he says, I know she really is. But like, to be honest, I wish I was even uglier, because right now, it's just too easy. What a great response. He basically showed that he was completely unflustered by it.
You can almost get away with anything with humor. Yeah, you can. You can really, penetrate people's sort of like barriers and almost like penetrate their ego in a certain way. It is just a really powerful tool in general. And it makes you feel good as well. It's as much about kind of satisfying yourself as anything else, really.
Cheers for watching. If you'd be interested in one-to-one coaching with me, where we'll go out in public and work on your approaching girls, or more generally with your social confidence, please visit my website ed-game.com.